Hi, this is Randy Wimmer, and welcome to our webinar. We've already got a lot of people here, so let's get started. This right here is my credibility slide. I'm supposed to do it so you'll listen to what I have to say. However, my real credibility slide is the next one, so bear with me. I'm going to give you what's expected of me here. So those logos to the right of my image, those are my first and oldest companies that I launched, certainly the most financially successful ones. I've launched other companies in other industries, in the IT industry, the mobile app industry, the services industry, and so on. But those are my first ones, and certainly the most valuable ones that I launched or co-launched or co-owned or something. Those are my babies. So I've won over $2 billion in federal government contracts. I've won nearly $400 million in revenue for my own companies. My companies have been featured on the Inc. 500 Fastest Growing Company list and the Washington Technology Fast 50 list on multiple occasions. I've been invited to multiple prestigious CEO consortiums, Mission Link and Mindshare. My family-owned and operated nonprofit organization was honored with the President George H.W. Bush Points of Light Award for providing thousands of underserved elementary schools with after-school STEM programs. We're really proud of that. But this right here is the real credibility slide that I have. I wasted nearly a decade of my life screwing things up as a first-time small business owner and aspiring entrepreneur. I screwed things up. When crossing that entrepreneurial minefield, I not only stepped on every landmine, I stepped on every landmine twice, and some of them 3 times. Like I said, I'm not that bright. I'm the one who should be wearing that dunce cap. So there's my credibility. But once I kind of broke the code and I figured it out, and it all comes down, in my opinion, to this one strategy for rapid wealth accumulation. Every single thing that I turned to gold. It became easy once I figured this thing out. So what did I figure out? I figured out to buy better canned tuna. It'll make sense. Bear with me. So trust me, it all comes down to buying better canned tuna. We're all small business owners and aspiring entrepreneurs, and we all have a dream. Now, I'm just going to cut to the chase. There's basically only 2 strategies that's going to help you accomplish that dream. So let's talk about those 2 different strategies and those 2 different types of companies. An income-based company. Well, what's the pluses of those? Well, it improves your quality of living through corporate income. Makes sense. You know, you have a lemonade stand on the side is bringing in some income. Hey, you can go out there and buy that bicycle now. Quality of life has been improved. However, it doesn't scale to accumulate wealth. You know, so if you're happy with just buying the bicycle, that's great. You know, hey, I just want a bicycle to drive around for the summer. You know, that's quality of life. You're still working every single day. You're still doing X. You're still doing Y. And, you know, you're not going to be able to go onto that theme park vacation. It's not going to buy your trip to Disney World, but it'll get you a bicycle, and that may make you happy. Now let's take a look at an equity-based company. Well, what are the pluses? Well, it focuses on increasing wealth by owning an appreciating asset. Well, let's just say you or your parents or your grandparents way back in the early or mid 1970s, instead of renting a house, they decided that they were going to buy it. So what did they do? They signed up for a mortgage, and they started, you know, they bought the house for $20,000. Well, here they are 45, 50 years later, and that house that they bought for $20,000 is now worth over $500,000. Now, that's because they owned the asset instead of just renting it. Had they just rented it, well, you know, the rent would have skyrocketed, you know, over this time period. And when they finally left the house, they wouldn't owe anything but probably a security deposit. But that's it. You know, see, there's the difference between owning an asset and just renting one. The Dow Jones, you know, kind of shows you what a good investment the stock market is. So you invest in the stock market, boom, you know, it appreciates over time. But what happens when you don't have money to buy the asset? There's your first negative. Your first negative is it typically takes money to buy the asset to make money. That's the first thing. The second thing is you're not always immediately rewarded with income. It's looking long-term, big picture. If you look at this right here, I tell people that making your first dollar bill is just as hard as making your first $1 million, which is just as hard as making your first $10 million. That's not a joke. So when I tell people, like, hey, you can't quit. And they're always saying, like, Randy, man, I'm struggling. I'm just making a few bucks on the side here on my company. I'm saying, like, you're halfway to becoming a millionaire. And nobody believes that. Nobody. But that first dollar bill is just as hard as making your next $999,999, which is just as hard as making your next $9 million. And so when you make your first dollar bill as a small business owner, you're 1/3 of the way to becoming a decamillionaire and having over 10 million bucks in your hip pocket. I know that's hard to believe, but this right here is the curve to my very first company. It cost me $500 to launch. Think about that. $500 to launch an asset that has created generational wealth. $500. Again, that is why entrepreneurs launch startups. If you can't afford to buy an appreciating asset, you create one. You create it with your sweat. Now, I just said that it took me $500 to launch my first company, and I don't want you to think that that's all it cost me. It cost me 8+ years of my life that I wasted to figure things out. This webinar is all about how to eliminate that 8+ years of wandering around the desert trying to figure things out. If you want to create wealth, you want to have an equity-based company. If you wanted to have an equity-based company, there are certain things you have to do. And this is what we're going to be discussing tonight. First of all, you have to have corporate maturity. Got to be operating as a company, not a car wash. Now, a lot of people say, hey, I'm a company, I'm making revenue, I got a customer. Like, no. I tell people, you don't have a company until your company has its own documented way of doing business. You're not a company. You got a good deal. You're like my local high school band, it's not a company, but it makes money. It's got customers when it does its car wash. Now, if you've ever gone to one of those car washes, man, it is chaos. Water everywhere, soap everywhere. You'll leave with a whole bunch of soap on your car and a whole bunch of dirt on it too. But it's a lot of fun. But it's not a company, and they're not doing things. It's chaos. It's ad hoc. The second thing that you've got to do, and I'm able to say this because I'm telling you all the stupid things that I did, but one of the smartest things I ever did was go to an M&A firm and say, hey, I want to create no kidding equity in my company. How do I do that? And it's all about an equity-based company. It's all about identifying the needs of future buyers. So what does that mean? Well, there's a whole bunch of reasons why somebody may want to buy your company. New products, new sales channels, new capabilities, new customers, new this, new that, ... But it all comes down to this right here. You have to have valuable customer engagements. For a company to want to buy your company, those engagements have got to move the needle for them. Because if they've got enough money to buy your company, when I'm talking about a customer engagement, for it to even be considered a customer engagement and for you to have traction with that customer, it's got to be pretty damn big. So we're all talking about large customer engagements. You got to have big deals, big contracts. It's just got to be big. Well, here's the good news. Most small businesses play in the tiny, bottom-feeding, low-profit subcontracts or the small deals. It's a feeding frenzy down there. Your competition, and I'm going to tell you my worst-case scenario. I was bidding on something that was small that I could do. I felt like I could step up to it, and when I bid, little did I know that 54 of my closest friends, other companies, were bidding on it too. So I had a 1 in 55 chance of winning. Now, I have won tens of millions contracts for tens of millions of dollars, and my competition you could count on your fingers of one hand. Now I'm not talking about two hands, I'm talking about one hand. And so your competition, as the size of the opportunity increases, tremendously decreases. But still, there's a lot of competition out there. It doesn't matter what area you're operating in. There's 31.7 million small U.S. businesses. You got a ton of competition in your market space. Every market space has a ton of competition. So how do you stand out? Well, I'm going to let this guy right here named Bob, he just graduated from high school. He knows the answer to this just like we all do, but we seem to forget to apply it towards our company. So Bob, he just graduated from high school and he blasts out his resume to all the swanky consulting firms because he wants to become a high-end business consultant. And he lists all the clubs that he did in high school, and we all know what happens. And that's absolutely nothing. You know, McKinsey, Accenture, Deloitte, Boston Consulting, they're not even going to give this guy the time of day. Why? Because when you look at his resume, there's nothing on it. Nothing on it. He's got zero work history. He's got nothing on his resume that says that he can do the job and that he's a low-risk hire. He offers no value to that potential employer. But Bob's pretty smart, so he decides he's going to go to college. And he's going to compensate for his lack of work experience with a personal credential called a college degree. So he's going to go to MIT and he's going to get a computer science degree. Then he's going to go across town in Cambridge and he's going to get a Harvard MBA. And then he's going to sit for his CPA exam. So now he's got 3 personal credentials and he's got these consulting firms standing in line to hire this guy. Now, he still doesn't have a single day of work experience on his resume, but yet he has people standing in line to hire him. And the reason why is because of his credentials. His credentials do that for him. Now, we as small business owners, we tend to forget that. We think like, hey, I've got this sexy resume. Wow, look at my resume. It's pretty impressive. And it's what you'd expect from a founder of a company. But they're not hiring you. They're hiring your asset. And your asset's resume is perfectly blank when you're starting out. When you're a small business, whatever work experience that you have is pretty insignificant. So how do you compensate for your total lack of work experience? You do it the same way you do when you graduate high school and you go to college. You get credentials, but you're getting credentials for your company. Less than 1% of U.S. businesses can show an ISO certification logo in their marketing material. Less than 1%. So if you get ISO 9001, which is typically the first one you have to obtain, it's like your bachelor's degree in the world of ISO certification. Your company is in the top 1%. And now you're going to say, top 1% of what? Well, let's talk a little bit about what ISO is and what that standard means. Again, this is like a degree. So what did you get your degree in? Well, in the case of ISO 9001, you're getting it in management systems, how you operate your company. Now, it's a quality management system. Everybody focuses on quality, like, well, I'm not a quality engineer. I don't do quality, production. I'm an IT company. No, the quality is an adjective. It's how you manage your company. And what does that mean? Well, you have the ISO organization. And what they do is they create standards of how to do things. And it's globally recognized as the best practices by everybody. It's globally accepted. So in this particular case, the ISO 9001 deals with management systems for your company, risk management, change management, communication management, tracking key performance indicators, and so on and so forth. So that's what that means. Now, in addition to being validated by an accredited third party and being shown to be compliant with the globally accepted industry best practice for doing things the best way, these are the principles that are associated with having it. You're customer focused. You've got aligned leadership within the company. You've got engaged and empowered employees. You've taken process approach to have consistent performance. You're committed to continuously improve. You use evidence-based decision making, and you're focused on relationship management. Those are all positive things that every single company I know of would be really proud to have associated with their company brand. So you really have a choice. If you're going to get over the hump as a small business, you can either create this corporate maturity yourself and figure out, you walk through the jungle and you got to figure out how you're going to establish your own management systems for your company to do these things. Or what you can do is you can use the tried and true ISO framework to help mature your company. And most importantly, to prove to those large companies that you are low risk. It's all about risk. The larger the customer engagement, the more they focus on risk rather than anything else. At some point, it shifts around, and now they focused on, are they going to be able to do the work? Not is it, can they do the best work, but can they finish the job? Are they sufficiently mature? And you got no work history to prove that you can do it. So what do? You put forth your credentials and you say, hey, I'm a smart dude. I got a computer science degree from MIT. I have, Harvard MBA, and I'm a CPA. I can do the work. And they say, yeah, it looks like you can. You're low risk. Boom, join our team. And it's the same thing with your business. You're saying, hey, I'm one of 1% of U.S. businesses that can say that they have been validated by an accredited third party to be operating their company in accordance with the globally accepted best practices for quality management, for risk management, for change management, all those different things that we discussed previously. Let's get back to tuna. I'm embarrassed to say that a few years ago, I went to the grocery store and I was asked by my wife to pick up a few cans of tuna. We were going to have, tuna salad that night. And I never really paid attention to canned tuna. I thought, it's canned tuna. So I went to the canned tuna section and I saw some that cost $1.19 and some that cost $2.15. I'm thinking like, why in the world did I spend $2.15 for canned tuna when I can buy it for $1.19 over here? So I bought the $1.19 chunk light tuna, not knowing that there was a difference between chunk light tuna and solid white albacore. And I saved 96 cents, and I'm telling you, I was so proud of myself. I even told my wife, "Hey man, can you believe that? I can't believe how much the price varies for tuna." And then I opened up that can of tuna, that chunk light tuna, and I don't think I could have had a cat eat the stuff. It looked so nasty. I'm thinking like, whoa, this is not what I'm used to seeing when I think of canned tuna. And the reason why is because my wife always invested the additional 96 cents to get the better canned tuna. Canned tuna is so damn cheap. Why people don't invest 96 cents more into something that's already ridiculously cheap to get something that's actually good and delicious rather than something that a cat would turn its head to. It's the same way with businesses and startups. I know that you're in the heat of the battle right now and you don't see it, but a services company is one of the cheapest startups that you can launch. You're not dropping $1.5 million in an expensive franchise. You don't have to do expensive R&D. You don't have to do expensive manufacturing. You don't have to buy all this infrastructure. You don't have to make any of those investments. You don't have to provide tremendous scale before you can actually cut a profit. It's services. It's ridiculously cheap. Now, it doesn't seem that way to you right now, but it is. Why not invest the equivalent of 96 cents more to your services company to eliminate that 8.5 years? I wasted 8.5 years of my life because I didn't make that tiny little investment. to expedite my growth curve. And it is a curve. It really is. I didn't have the wisdom to do that. Now you're looking at me like, yeah, okay, Randy, you're selling something. Okay, fair enough, I am. So don't believe me. So who do you believe? Well, I'm not going to believe me. I'm not going to say believe the federal government, but I will say this: they're the only ones who are really actually providing and tracking data on small businesses. In 2014, they launched a contract vehicle that was called the Oasis contract. It was one acquisition for integrated services. Look at these services that they were asking small businesses to do: financial, logistics, engineering, scientific, management consulting, and program management. This was an earlier version. They actually included R&D on this as well as a core discipline. So these were high-end services, and they wanted small businesses to be able to do it. So they went and they accepted the best 108 small businesses in industry to be on this contract vehicle. I'll pat myself on the back here. My company was the youngest and the smallest to be accepted on this contract vehicle, so that's something that we're really proud of. Well, they used this contract so much because it literally had the best 105 small businesses, in this, one could argue even, in the United States. And so everybody wanted to use it because they wanted, the best companies to be able to do the work. 5 years later, in 2019, they realized, man, half of our companies are gone. And the reason why is because they grew so quickly that they were acquired. Yours truly included in that. So they say, hey, we need to add more companies to this list. So they did an on-ramp where they, again, did a solicitation, and they selected the 58 best available small businesses to join this contract. So 53% of those new awardees were ISA certified. 31% were CMMI appraised. And again, those are comparable credentials. Over 70% had one or the other. Over 70%. What's interesting is, let's take a look at the companies that they kicked off because they were no longer small. You had to be, when they started this, you had to be below 16 million. Well, the largest company that they kicked off was almost 300 million. I want you to think about that. And most of these companies were over 100 million. So they had grown rapidly during that 5 year because they were really good companies. They were going to grow no matter what. 23 out of 26 of those companies were ISA certified. 23 out of 26 of arguably the best small businesses supporting the federal government were ISA certified. 23 out of 26. 88%, 9 out of 10. If something is 9 out of 10, it's not a coincidence. Again, this is my story and how I wasted 8.5 years of my life between when I launched my company and when I started getting traction. 8.5 years of my life. And then when I started after I won my very first prime contract, I couldn't grow beyond that. Hell, I was barely adequately supporting it. So once I got my act together and got ISA certified in 2013, I said hey, whoa, not only am I more organized and I've stopped operating like a car wash, I look pretty damn low risk. And I shifted my growth strategy. So I stopped bidding on those bottom feeder types of contracts and I started bidding on massive ones. The smallest contract that I bid on, that I pursued between 2013 and 2016 was worth $28.8 million. That's how I won nearly $400 million in contracts in 3.5 years. I focus on supporting small businesses exclusively as a social impact company. I've already got my nest egg. I've already got my retirement. I'm making enough money to keep my company viable and to hopefully be able to turn it over when I'm too old or too feeble or not wanting to donate my time to do this. And I don't want to turn it over to somebody and then have to tell them oh yeah, you got to eat ramen 3 times a day and and work out of a garage. So I have to make enough money in order to be able to operate as a no-kidding legitimate company. But this is our process. This is how we could get you your ISO certifications faster, easier, and more affordably than anybody else. We sit with you for 1 hour to get your information. We take that information and we create a fully customized ISO program to your company. While we're doing that, you're doing our 6, 7, 8 hour online self-paced training program to manage, to learn how to manage your program, not generic ISO, but this is your program. This is how you do it. This is what your process is called. This is your template. This is your this. This is your that. So while you're doing that training program, we go one step further. So we're providing you the ISO compliant process. You're learning how to use it. And then what we do is we provide you an example record of what an end product would look like having used it. For example, every small business out there has a cash flow risk. So we enter a risk in your risk register. Boom. That's what a risk looks like in your risk register. There's one record. But your program says that you've got to assess that risk. You've got to evaluate it. So you've got an evaluation form. So we evaluate that risk. And it's not a matter of if you're going to have cash flow concerns in your company life cycle, it's when. That's a pretty high risk. So that survey is completed. So now you get your second record. Well, since it's a high risk, we create a risk management plan for you in accordance with your processes, and it basically says what you'd expect it to. Hey, start researching additional sources of financing. So when you do have cash flow concerns, you can meet those through financing, and there's your third risk. So now you know what those finished products are supposed to look like. Now this is what 99.999% of our clients do. They realize that their program is never going to be more pristine than when we give it to them. They haven't had a chance to screw it up yet. And these records that were created by experts who have been doing this for over a decade, they're not going to be any better, than anything that they'll be able to create a year from now or 6 months from now, whenever from now. And they realize that they will never be more ready for that ISO audit than they are then. So what they do is they take those example but very authentic records, and they sign them, and now they become real records for their company. And then they have their audit. Now, since you're a services company, U.S. auditing companies aren't going to tell you this because they make a lot of money by doing in-person audits because they can charge you per diem and travel, and they kind of have you over a barrel to upsell you to their training programs and so on and so forth. So U.S. auditing firms are never going to tell you this. But if you're a services company, they don't have to do an in-person audit. They can do a remote audit. So what I do to avoid you having that additional expense and inconvenience, I use a company that's outside the United States, fully accredited. ISO is a global certification, so you didn't have to be a U.S.-based accredited company. It could be any accredited company. So I find one that's overseas, cheaper, and they do it remotely. So they're not in your office for 3 to 4 days, shutting your productivity down. And by doing so, I am able to do it at a fraction of the cost of other companies. I'll talk about that here in a second. So how hard is it? Well, believe it or not, it'll never be easier for you to get ISO certified than it will be now as a small business. As a small business, a lot of the more difficult ISO certifications are not applicable. So all you need to have is a document in place, a policy or a process or procedure in place for when you do need it. So it becomes very, very, very easy for a small business. Plus, again, no U.S.-based auditor is ever going to tell you this because they want your money. ISO expects the complexity of your ISO program to reflect the size and the complexity of your company. So, a U.S.-based auditor is not going to say that because, again, they're there to make money. They all are, but the U.S.-based ones they really know how to twist the knife in your back here. So they won't tell you that. So the threshold of getting ISO certified is actually kind of low for a small business. Not so much for a bigger business. Now, how much does it cost? Well, when I got my first ISO certification, ISO 9001 in 2013, my total cost was $25,000. I can get you 2 ISO certifications, and one being ISO 27001, which is the hottest one going, information security. and that's a really expensive one, and it's one that all these bigger companies struggle to get, and they look at you and they think, "My God, how did you get it? Wow, you must be something special." Because the bigger you are, the harder it is to get. For now, ISO 27001 is mostly a paperwork chase. Do you have the policies and procedures for when you grow and you need to have your own firewall policies, your own router policies, your own this? Well, you got the policies and procedures in place and the guidelines for when you do become a massive company. You do need those things. But there's some of it that is applicable to you. Now, if you Google total cost to get ISO 27001, this is Google. There's nothing nefarious about what I'm showing you here. On average, it's about $55,000, $40,000 for the ISO prep to get you ready for the audit, and $15,000 for the actual audit itself. That's $55,000 on average. I can get you two for less than that. And since you're suffering through this webinar, what I'm doing is I'm also offering our advanced government contracting program on top of that. Now that is a $10,000 program that I'm offering. And the reason why I'm able to offer that, as an add-on for free is because I created it. It's 25 courses. It's got over 150 lessons in it. It's got thousands of downloads, business tools, sample proposal content, brochure, templates, all of that stuff. And everybody says, well, I'm not interested in doing government contracting. Well, the question is well, why not? It's a $1 trillion industry, and the level of competition is really low. Plus, they got the small business set-aside program. It's easy. But even if you don't want it, a lot of this is just generic how to be successful as a small business. And then finally, if you'd like to learn more, email me at Randall at ISO Certification Group or Randall.Wimmer at Government Contracting Academy. I also have a book that's called Good Enough to Launch Your Company. I launched just a couple months ago, and it kind of covers, my approach to launch a company.